Hello, and welcome to Author's Voice, the virtual book signing network. With me today is a wonderful German author by the name of Marc Elsberg, and his novel Blackout has been a blockbuster in Germany, and it is now available in the US. It was originally published 5 years ago. It's about a power blackout all over Europe, and it has just hit the American market, published by Source Books. So thank you, Source Books, for allowing him to come on our show. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about, hopefully we're going to talk about a lot of other things as well. So welcome, Marc.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I can do my official hello. Tell us a little bit about your life before you became a writer.
Yeah, Libby, as you already mentioned, I've been in advertising for 20 years as a creative. Originally, I started out, before I started in advertising, I studied at the Vienna Art Academy. So my original idea was not to become a writer, it was to become an artist or a comic artist or a graphic designer or something like that. And then during my studies, I also started working at an advertising agency, which soon became my major occupation then. And it was only in advertising that I really started writing, because first I was the art director doing making everything beautiful. This was the job of the art director, but I never thought this was the intriguing thing about advertising. I always thought the intriguing thing about advertising was to get into people's heads and hearts. And for some reason, in most agencies I had been then, it was the copywriter's job to have the ideas. And such a thing as is today known as strategic planning was not existent then in the German-speaking advertising world, so it was basically the creative's job.
So you were originally a visual person.
Exactly.
And you went into being a wordsmith. How did that process evolve? Did it come out of your advertising work, or were you always familiar and comfortable with language?
I was always familiar in terms of reading, because I was a real book eater, I'd say. But I never wrote. So writing I just started in advertising when I discovered, okay, to be the guy who is allowed to have the ideas for commercials, for AdWords, I have to be the copywriter. So I started copywriting. And that's when I also started to think about storytelling, investigating storytelling. But I would still consider myself the optical type. What I'm doing today is painting pictures with words.
Exactly.
So I think that's a writer's job, to put pictures in readers' heads.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to master the craft of fiction?
Quite a while. As you mentioned, my first book was published 17 years ago, and it took me probably 2 years to prepare it. And but as I told, I've been thinking about it and reading about storytelling, about just the craft of writing a lot and longer before. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it's been at least 10 years.
But it wasn't crime fiction, it was satire, correct?
The first was a crime fiction, sorry. The first was a satire, and then there were 3 more conventional crime fiction books.
Okay. Why did you turn to a life of crime?
I was always a crime novel, a reader of crime novels. Mm-hmm. So I thought, write what you like to read. That was the basic idea.
Yeah. You wrote originally under a pseudonym. Why was that?
Well, actually, it's the other way around. I now write under a pseudonym.
Oh, so that was your real name?
This is my real name. But actually, the pseudonym is just a shortened version. Mm-hmm. It's original given name or birth name is Marcus Raffelsberger, a real Austrian name. No one could ever remember. And even at home, when I order a table in a restaurant on a telephone under this name, every time I get it written wrong. So I decided when I changed, when I switched the genre and the publisher to get a more suitable, a more rememberable name, and just shorten my name. So it's not Marcus, it's Marc, and the Raff Elsberg, Elsberg.
Right.
It's just.
So Blackout was your fourth novel, or?
Yeah, Blackout was the fourth.
And you moved into thriller territory, into high suspense, which is what I love to write.
Me
myself.
too, that's why I did it.
So where did the idea come from?
The idea originated during research for a different story, which I then never wrote. And during this research, I found out something I found very interesting. This was how we changed the organizational structures of our societies during the last 20, 30 years. And meaning interconnectivities, just-in-time production, all this stuff. And when I started talking about it with friends, relatives, and so I realized most of them were not aware what this meant, of the consequences of everything. And so I thought, how can you tell this story? And I dug deeper. So the original idea was just some criminals blackmailing a company, but not by, for example, putting a poisoned food can into the drugstore or the shelf of the supermarket, but by somehow manipulating these complex supply chains we have today, these global supply chains. Because what many people are not aware, not only airplanes or cars today are constructed or applied by companies or manufacturing plants, which get supplied by many other suppliers from all over the world. But it's even a simple thing like a coffee cup from Starbucks, which is made of several layers, which come from there and there and there. So everything
I said an airplane has like almost 200 parts that are delivered or received by other vendors.
More like 200 suppliers.
It's,
today, an airplane assembled in Seattle by Boeing, 90% of the parts come from all over the world. From Japan, from Italy, from France, from everywhere. This was different in the 50s or in the 60s. Then 90% came out of Seattle. And now it's 90% from all over the world. And it's not with the plane, it's even with the Starbucks coffee cup.
Wow.
So, and if you start digging deeper, you find out it's not only these industrial supply chains, it's also hospitals today, organized like this car or plane assembly plant, depending on different suppliers delivering food, clean clothes and bed sheets, and so on. And
so how did you settle on the power grid?
Yeah, this was the next question. How am I gonna tell this story? And since I had been in advertising for 20 years, there are, of course, you learn strategies to make things aware people are not aware of. And one of these strategies is leave away one important part. So in advertising, this would turn out as some slapstick commercial. Say you want to make people aware how cozy a sofa is, and you see sitting people on a sofa, and suddenly the sofa disappears, people fall on their butt on the hard floor, and then, okay, yeah, that's leave it away, and people realize. And so I thought, yeah, okay, then I have just to leave away some of these complex systems we deal with today, like power supply. It also could have been a financial system, logistics systems, communication systems, whatever. Only with the power supply, it hits fastest.
And it's so visceral. I mean, there's no light, there's no heat,
because if you leave away one of these parts, everything else will follow like on a domino day.
Yeah. Well, it was an engrossing read. I really couldn't put it down. It was a wonderful read, and of course I have a lot of questions about it. How were you, did you know each of the consequences that were going to occur as a result of the power loss? I mean, everything from people going hungry to people rioting to actual deaths. Did you know all of that?
No, I realized during research, and this was then what made me write this book instead of the one I planned originally, because I thought I was on a journey. I was on a journey finding out what incredible things would happen. And then I thought, okay, I want to take my readers with me on this journey, finding out, okay, like the lead person in the book, Piero Manzano, an Italian guy in Italy who first gets involved in the story in a traffic accident because traffic lights fall out.
But he used to be, it turns out he used to be a hacker.
He used to be a hacker, luckily, so
Yeah.
he later on can
Right.
can try to find who caused the whole catastrophe. But Piero also soon finds out what else also is failing within the first minutes. For example, when he gets home, at least at this night, he has a glass of wine, and after that he has to go to the toilet, and after flushing, he misses this familiar sound when the tank of the toilet fills up again. Because what people usually don't know is that often water supply depends on the power grid. So these are the things I found out. Who would think your toilet doesn't work any longer if power fails? Or another thing is that, for example, most gas stations no longer work if power fails, which in a world where everything depends on just-in-time delivery, not only in industry, also our food supply, for example. And this means that within hours, as soon as tanks of trucks are empty, all our supply systems in our modern society fails. So these were the things I was realizing one after the other, and I now wanted my readers to experience, so my lead characters in the book have.
Speaking of characters, the way you approach it is you have a lot of characters.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you how you kept them separate. What was in your head when you were having them on the page?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of characters because I want to paint the big picture. There's Piero Manzano in Italy, there's this French guy with Europol in The Hague, and his family with his kids experiencing what is going on for a family. What does it mean suddenly if you don't have a toilet, if you have no water, if after a few days you have no food? How are you gonna cope? Then there's this young US student in Paris who is working as a journalist. And while writing, of course, it was, I'm the kind of planning writer. I'm not just writing and then
you outline.
rewrite. I outline a lot. And I do it in a quite classic way. I mean, I know about every person quite a lot. I write extensions, CVs of the persons, and then I have a huge chart where I start scribbling the scenes on small post-its, and every character gets its own color. And then I start putting them around. Yeah. And at a certain point in the story, I, of course, transfer it to some electronic document. But yeah, that's basically the way how I deal with it, and keeping them separate and not losing track of anyone.
So this was, Blackout was a blockbuster in Germany, and you were saying it was very lucky in the time it came out because there were discussions within the government about this very thing?
Yeah, there was, after Fukushima, the German government decided to switch off nuclear power plants sooner than expected. And so especially the large energy providers and producers in Germany cried out, no, they're going to be blackout and so on. This was right the time when my book hit the market. So suddenly, without me being able to know it in advance, the topic was all over the place. And there was this book telling exactly the story, and severely researched. And what surely helped was that at the same time when I researched for my book, already the German government had given the order to conduct a scientific study about the same subject.
Use of fossil fuels.
No, about what would happen if parts of the infrastructure would go down. So this study was
Amazing.
Was published a few months before my book came out, which helped a lot because in the beginning, some people would say with my book, that's just weird fantasies of a thriller writer. And then I always could say, look at the study of the government.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm even easygoing. And yeah, this for sure helped a lot. But what also sure helped for the success was that if you shut the book, if you have read it, you think on one hand, okay, I've had a thrilling read for a few hours. And on the other hand, okay, I've learned something about how today's world is working.
So intertwined. I understand that you now talk to energy companies and governments about some of the issues that are raised in your book. How did that come about?
To my own surprise, the first invitation after the book was published didn't come from a bookstore. It came from part of administration in Germany dealing with infrastructures and security of infrastructures. And this went on now for years. I've been invited by over 200 events, I think. And even in the...
Did you say 200 events?
Yeah, probably more. And it even got me last week when I started my US tour an invitation to the US Department of Energy where I gave a speech.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if you have any questions for Marc and you're watching live, feel free to submit them and we'll get back to our talk right now. What kinds of things do you talk about with these companies and government systems?
It depends on who invites me and what the particular subject is. Mostly it's the bigger picture, all these interdependencies and how to deal with them. And of course, at the moment, what is a major topic is cybersecurity, of course, because in my book, the event is triggered by an hacker attack. And as we've seen again in the last weeks and months, they are all over. And they could happen every day, and there's still not enough awareness about the danger. So this, for sure, is one of the hottest topics at the moment.
Actually, I wrote a book in 2016 called Jump Cut, which was also about hacking and ethical hackers and national security and things like that. You went on to write several other thrillers, which are doing really well. One of them is called Zero, and it's about big data. And again, I don't know, you must have been prescient because here we are in our country talking about how big data can manipulate elections. Tell us a little bit. We don't have that much time left.
Yeah, Zero was published in 2014, first in Germany, and by now also in other markets like France and so. And it deals exactly with big data, with predictive analytics, and also, of course...
What's the storyline?
The storyline is a British journalist, a mother, a single mother, finds out about a hidden experiment of a large US data company comparable to, let's say, Facebook or something. And actually, when the book came out in 2014, it was the same week when Facebook published an experiment close to the one I describe in my book, where Facebook manipulated 800,000 of the users. So, and also side stories dealing with elections, manipulating elections with big data, with these modern digital tools we have now.
It's so current for us. And apparently you just published a third thriller about genetics.
Yes, this was last October, November. It first came out also in Germany, and it has now been published in Poland as well, and is to come out in several other languages soon. And as far as I know, I've just been informed by my literary agent when I left for the United States that there also will be an English edition the coming years.
Great. That's wonderful. What are you working on now?
Yeah, that's something my editor would like to know. Actually, I'm always working on several subjects, and then it's always the questions, okay, which one I'm gonna turn into a book next? And you, Libby, you know it as a writer, it's a difficult decision because you put a lot of effort and time into it, and you wanna make it work, so.
I was working on 2 ideas, both of which I rejected because I just didn't have that feeling inside of me. It's kind of that frisson of energy that you need, and when you say, this is the one.
Yeah, exactly.
And it finally came to me just recently.
Yeah,
so.
that's same with me. At the moment, it's more like there are 2 or 3 which came to me, and I have to decide, okay, which of you am I gonna take?
Yeah.
Or maybe I make 2, we'll see.
How often are you writing a book?
So Blackout, Zero, and Helix were published in every 2 years. It was 2012, 2014, and 16.
Oh, nice.
So the next should be out next year.
That's great, because here they put you on, it's kind of like the rats in a maze. They put you on a 1-year schedule if you're a big 5 publisher, and I think that's kind of too much.
I think it depends on if you let's say have a classic crime story, a serial, for example, and you don't have to do any more research or not too much research for your topic, and you know your characters already, and the books are not too thick, that it might be doable, but
it's gotten out of control, though. There are people now who are publishing 3 books, 4 books. I've heard independent authors, well, I have to publish a book every month, and I'm like, that's nuts.
No, that doesn't work.
That's not. I want to look
you
forward.
You lose quality.
Yeah, I want to look forward to a new Marc Elsberg book or a new Dennis Lehane book.
Exactly,
or, I don't want them to feel like they're hurried and they have to, some artificial schedule. Yeah. So, how long are you going to be in the U.S.?
I'm going to stay for another few days. Tomorrow I'll be in San Diego, California, and on Saturday I'll be in Orange, close to Los Angeles.
Sure, Orange County.
And then I'll have Sunday off, meeting some friends in Los Angeles. Monday an appointment, a quite interesting one, which has nothing to do with publishing, but more with movies. And,
good.
And streaming and TV
Blackout,
and so
Blackout would make a terrific film.
Yeah, that's what they also think.
Yeah.
And on Tuesday I'm flying back to Vienna.
Okay. Oh, good, Vienna, such a beautiful,
beautiful
city. So if you're out on the West Coast and you want to see Marc, check his website, and maybe you can find the place where he's going to be, right?
Yeah, you can find me on marcelsberg.com, the English section, and you also can follow me on Facebook or connect on Twitter or Instagram.
Great. Now, I just have one little question. Do you miss the satire that you were writing initially, or are you happy to be writing thrillers?
I've always been a thriller reader, so I'm not really missing it, and maybe I'm not the satire writing type, but who knows? Never say never. I mean, I might come up with a satire once again. Who knows? And
do you write any short stories or novellas in addition to your novels?
Not yet. Usually, I think I know this is critical, but I think it's a short story needs almost as much effort developing as a thriller or as a whole book. So it's getting the plot, getting all your characters right. It's a lot of effort for just 10, 20, 30 pages. Why not make a book?
Right. I've written short stories that people have said, why don't you write? But you know what? I look at it as a palate cleanser. When I'm writing a novel, it's a nice way to get away from the novel if you're just feeling overwhelmed.
I somehow never got comfortable, at least not yet, with the short form. Or maybe I've done it too long in advertising, because there you're forced to be really short. Copywriting, writing headlines, so maybe I've done that enough.
Yes, yeah, you probably have, come to think of it. You've had your fair share of short writing. Well, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time with Marc Elsberg, but thank you for joining us on Author's Voice, the virtual book signing network. And